Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your walk-ins welcome for the next hour, because we have with us one of my closest friends, Bridget Phetasy. She's the host of Walk-ins Welcome and Dumpster Fire. Bridget, I was looking at past guests who I wanted to have back on, and I saw I haven't had you on in 2 years, which is really kind of odd because we always have fun. The guests like it. On my locals, mouse.locals.com, I asked people who they want to see as returning guests, and your name popped up quite frequently. Um, so yeah, welcome back to the show. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
And everyone get ready for us to be cracking up like idiots. Often at things that for them aren't that funny, but for us are, which I think is the mark of good friendship. Before we started, I cut you off because last time we talked, you were in the process of moving from shithole LA to Austin. Now you're here, and you were telling me there's all these conspiracy theories you heard about your burning motherland. Can you share some of those with the guests?
I was joking on stage the other night. I was like, feeling pretty good about that decision.
Was
Too
your house
soon.
was your house close?
No, because I would never live where, I never understood anyone who lived in canyons in that city. I get it, it's beautiful, but I'm too much of a it's like the ninja in me or something. I could, people would be like, "Live in Topanga, it's so beautiful." I'm like, "There's one way in, there's one way out. We live on a fault. There are constantly fires, there are mudslides." Like, nothing about the beauty of those places appealed to me. So I always lived in a little bit more of like an urban jungle.
Do you know
So
do you know what's even funnier is I don't know if it's my mom or just my Russian heritage or being from Brooklyn. I will not live on the first floor because of break-ins, and if I'm going to buy a house, I will not buy a house where you can look in from the street.
Oh, interesting.
So they
Yeah,
can
that
face
makes
the house.
sense.
Like, I can't it's like a non-starter, and, like, I literally don't understand how people are fine with it. Like, I can't wrap
Yeah.
my head around it. Maybe because they weren't raised in Brooklyn, so, like, they're from places where things like that don't happen, but there's enough crime here in Austin that I would just be scared.
Yeah, Austin's, a little bit like little LA in some
Yeah.
respects. It's not it's and I mean, I don't know if it's getting more or less like that. It just seems like most of the cities in America are deteriorating to some degree. But yeah, there's it was weird. I was just there. So I was just 2 days before the fires started. I had left LA. My family still lives there. So I was there at the Getty Villa, all the places that are now, burned around them.
Wait, the Getty's burned? The museum?
The Getty Museum didn't burn. The Getty Villa around it burned, but they take a lot of precautions
Okay.
because there's so I mean, the exhibit that I went to that's there right now is one of the most incredible exhibits I've ever seen. It was on Thrace. It is stunning. It's beautiful. It's just, I was like, "Oh, man, I hope they don't lose that." But even those buildings are pretty fireproof
Okay.
themselves. Um, but especially at the Getty Villa. So we were trying to get out before the Santa Ana winds, because we had to extend it. My daughter got sick, and we had to push our flight back. And I knew everybody. This is why when they're like, "Oh, we didn't know," I'm like, everyone in LA was talking about these winds and how the newspapers were talking about them, locals were talking about them, people were preparing for them. They knew that how did the people and locals know that these winds were coming, but the government didn't?
Yeah, but
That's
is it like kinda like Bridget, you and I are old enough to remember, and some of the kids these days don't, that we kept hearing every year about the killer bees, and the killer bees are getting closer and closer to America, and when the killer bees come here, they're gonna kill us all, and then I think the killer bees did get here, and they just stopped talking about it, and no one really died. So maybe it's something like that, like, "Oh, they're coming, they're coming, they're coming," but they've been coming for 20 years? Is it like that?
I mean, that's a good faith interpretation of it, but
Well, that's what I'm known for, good faith regarding politicians.
I still think yes, as a person, that would make sense. As an average person
Yeah.
who's a citizen, yes, you should probably err on the side of I tend to have my husband jokes that he lacks my ability for catastrophic thinking. Like I I have the when the freaking COVID was coming, months before it hit here, I was down these rabbit holes. I'm like, there's something going on in China. They're welding people in. And he was like, what is your problem? You're a lunatic. Calm down. I'm like, go get a gun. It's coming. He was like, I'm like, they're going to shut everything down. He was like, you are out of your mind, Bridget. And he doesn't doubt my instincts anymore for
Wow.
catastrophe.
Okay.
And so I do think women in general have a little bit more are honed. All my women friends and I have been texting each other, and our husbands are like, "Can you tear yourself away from the news coverage, please?" And we're all like, "No, we can't." And I was like, I don't know if it's like Challenger syndrome. Like I saw the Challenger explode and
Oh
now I
yeah.
have and then 9/11 and so I
Do
have
you
this
remember? Do
weird
you remember the Challenger jokes?
no.
Why did NASA? Why do NASA astronauts love drinking Sprite? Because they couldn't get 7 Up.
Oh god.
You don't remember that?
I vaguely remember them, but I was probably what year was it when
Was it like 86 or something?
I
85?
was like 8.
Okay, I think that's what it
So,
was.
I have that same experience, the shared experience of them rolling out the freaking TV on the roller and then everyone being horrified, and
Wait,
then the
let's hold
teach
on before let's like it was 86, I was correct.
yeah.
January 28th, so like exactly,
So I was
almost
8.
exactly. But here's what's even funnier, so people don't realize about this. It's in retrospect, it's really funny. I think it's long enough that we can laugh. Okay,
No,
hold on.
it's really funny in
Okay,
retrospect.
I thought you were gonna correct me. Okay, so NASA has this space shuttle, and they're gonna put all these astronauts into space,
One of
and
them
they're
was
like,
a teacher.
can you not step on my punchlines? I know how to tell
Sorry.
a story, as this book demonstrates. This book, um, and Christy McCullough, wasn't that her name?
Mhm.
She had a school teacher, and it's like, oh my god, we're gonna put a teacher in space, and education is so great. Yeah, Krista McAuliffe. It's so exciting, like astronauts and a teacher, and she's doing the rounds, and I was like, oh my god, we're gonna put a teacher in space. So all the school children got the TV live, which was a big deal then because you didn't really have TVs in schools. And all the kids are sitting around watching, and this is going to be so exciting. And it lifts off. And then all the kids in America, without exception, watch this space shuttle explode, and everyone died with it. And it was exactly like the Simpsons episode where Krusty the Clown got a dummy to compete with with a Gabbo, and the dummy's jaw fell off, and all the kids started screaming. So Krusty's like, "Oh, this is fake! Look!" And he just punches in the face, and then they scream more, and he throws it at them, and then they scream more. It was just a national trauma only for kids because the adults could be like, "Okay, this sucks," but it's like
The
we
adults were traumatized too, though.
not
The
like the kids
teachers were
were,
crying. Oh, the
not
adults
like the
were I
not like the
remember my
kids.
mom being very traumatized by it, but she got kind of weirdly obsessed with different traumas too, like, as we grew up. Like, there would be, like, a fire where a family lost their kids, and she would become, like, obsessed with it. So I feel like it's also, like, a genetic thing that I have,
Well,
and
it was hilarious. It's like, how do we? Because every kid in America got their shit wrecked that day.
and then nothing. Like, it wasn't like now there would be, like, grief counseling, there would be all
Oh, that's right.
kinds of
Yeah.
they just rolled the TV out and, like, just carried on.
What's interesting is I was a business major, and they taught us that situation as an example of groupthink, because the thing was there were plenty of people in that situation who were like this some O-ring I think was an issue, but everyone was scared to speak up because everyone else seemed to think it was fine. And they really went back to the drawing board to their credit and were like, okay, it's as opposed to now, like, what do we do wrong, and how do we make sure something like this literally never ever happens again? So they had workarounds. So thank God that was put into place.
Yeah. Yeah, that was and then we all had, 9/11 too, which
Oh
was
yeah.
so I do think America is pretty used to just kind of sitting on the couch and watching tragedies unfold like this now. It's part of our somebody wrote about this recently that this is like our new national um our
Pastime.
yeah, like it's our culture now is watching disaster unfold collectively.
It was hard for me to wrap my head around LA, what's going on in LA, because you hear LA fires, you hear fires all the time, right? And then I saw this, right, but like for me, it's like easy to be like, okay, the phrase. And then I saw drone footage, and it looked like CGI, or it looked like Independence Day, the movie. It like, this doesn't look real because it's block after block after block. And in my head, and still, and it's like, how is this even possible? Like, it doesn't seem like like to your point, it's like, this is LA. This is some third world country where they don't have running water. Like, how are there not fail safes that, okay, if fires break out, which they do in LA all the time. I'm reading Tom Green's autobiography right now, and he talks about being with Drew Barrymore when they were a couple, and her house caught on fire, and everything got destroyed except for these few books. And it's just like, okay, this happens. Like, it happened in my lifetime. Like,
Yeah.
how were there not workarounds? You have these fire breaks or things like that. If I know how to do this, how do they not have things like place?
I mean, I think it was like I do believe it's like, as I always joke, embrace the healing power of and. I think it is a culmination of a lot of things.
Sure.
One being those were historic winds, and it was a it was a hurricane of fire. It was 90 mile. I mean, my brother's a fireman. It's 90. He's like, yeah, there's certain amounts that you can do, but with no running water and an empty reservoir and incompetence and not really, like I was saying, I think our leaders should err on the side of kind of, well, worst case scenario, are we ready? Even if you don't, the average person doesn't need to be living
Right.
like that. But you would hope that the leaders would be like, okay, these are supposed to be historic. And I just don't think that people, again, you mix that with incompetence or like whatever people want to say.
Hey, Kurt told me to say, it's not incompetence, it's malice. All right, folks, I'm out. Take care.
So now, of course, the conspiracy theories are flying. And the one that I was going to tell you about before we started recording was someone sent a map of the rail path that they want to build. And most of the
Right.
fires are around this path. So there's that one going around. Of course, there's the one that this is just another land grab by BlackRock or so to get the land for pennies on the dollar when people can't afford to rebuild or they can't, because a lot of the people are like, oh, these rich celebrities, it's just rich people. I'm like, you don't know LA. Altadena was working class. Pasadena had people who lived there that were house rich. So it was generations of people who had lived in the same neighborhood and they passed that house on. It was a tiny little cute house. It wasn't like they could never afford to buy into that neighborhood now. It's like the land is 4 plus million, I think.
Even look, I'm not a fan of the Kardashians, but having your house burned down and all your crap in it destroyed, it's like, I don't care how rich you are, you
Yeah.
can't replace that.
No, it doesn't. It shouldn't matter at all. But people, I think you really saw. I mean, I was doing a bit about this on Saturday. It's a new bit I'm trying to work out, but I've been obsessed with watching the live coverage, and more obsessed with the live coverage is the chat that occurs on the live coverage, because the chat is where humanity goes to die.
Is it all
Truly.
fire emojis, like, over and over?
No, it's like a combination of culture wars, conspiracies, and people being like, "Come on, guys, people are losing everything," like the normal person with a heart who's left in the chat. But some of it, they'll be like interviewing a guy who lost his childhood home and he's crying and he's really trying to process this. And the chat is like, damn, homeboy looks like Ned Flanders. And you're like, that's cold. And then you're like, but he does look like Ned Flanders.
And Ned Flanders lost his house, he was the only one.
They're like, Ned Flanders lost his house. Ha ha. Like the chat just starts going. Someone's putting flames out with a bowl, like a bowl in the background. And the chat is like, nice bowl. And you're like, that is cold blooded, but it is a nice bowl. You're like reverse searching it on where can I find that bowl?
I gotta tell you, the Google image search, okay, let me explain something to you that might be of interest. It's not gonna be of interest to anybody, but I'll say it anyway, like most of the stuff I say. Um, what China has done is, I'm a succulent enthusiast, they got a few hundred species, and there used to be plants that you'd find, like, once a year for sale, and it's, like, $75. What China has done is they take these plants, clone them, mass produce them, put them on eBay, sell them for $20, and they even say, if custom sees this, we'll replace it or refund it. So they're
Wow.
accounting for the risk for the seizure. So
Yeah.
but here's the thing, a lot of these plants, I don't even know what they are, but if you take the Google image search, it'll narrow down the species. That's how good it's gotten.
Yeah,
Like, it's
no, it's
really kinda
amazing.
crazy how good it's gotten at identifying things.
Yeah, like bowls in the background of
Yeah, or like rare, like South African succulents.
Yeah. Yeah, so the chat is I've been really just fascinated, but all the conspiracies are in there. The biggest one is that they're burning up the tunnels to hide the evidence of P. Diddy, like the P. Diddy evidence. That's the biggest one. We should have Metzger on.
God. Yeah, yeah. Wow.
I'm
I
sure
mean,
he's up to date on all of them.
that's a good point. I think I'm gonna start doing some live episodes, but in front of an audience, and I think he's gonna be my first guest
Oh, that's amazing.
because
I
it's
wanna
just
come.
you're absolutely invited. I'll get you a discount on the ticket.
You and I always wanted to do a national tour, a
That's
crossover
true.
tour.
That's true.
Walk-ins, you're welcome.
Your walk-ins welcome.
Your
You're welcome.
walk-ins your walk-ins welcome.
Walkouts. No, we should call it walkouts welcome. A tour of pointlessness.
I'm all for it. Let's do it.
Folks, let's face it, life can be stressful, it can be overwhelming, and it's not just your mind that suffers when you're feeling tense and anxious. Stress can make a mess of your digestion and immune system too, but here's the thing, you can handle it. Introducing Just Calm, it's the breakthrough new stress-busting formula from Just Thrive. Say goodbye to frazzled nerves, say hello to a steady, chill, more relaxed you. Just Calm's exclusive mood-lifting blend is clinically proven to help you relax and breathe a little easier in as little as 4 weeks. And for next level mood and immune support, give the award winning Just Thrive probiotic a try, as I'm doing and am reaping the benefits. It not only has 1,000 times better survivability than most probiotics, but this spore probiotic banishes bloat and constipation so your gut can produce more serotonin, which is your happy hormone. Plus, it supports better sleep. You can wake up feeling refreshed and revitalized. With Just Calm and Just Thrive probiotic, you'll have the ultimate stress fighting duo to help you win the day every day, and all with a money back guarantee. What do you have to lose? For a limited time, you can try Just Thrive risk-free. You can save 20% off a 90-day bottle of Just Thrive probiotic and Just Calm when you go to justthrivehealth.com and use promo code WELCOME. That's like getting a month for free with a money back guarantee, and a portion of every purchase goes to Vitamin Angels, which is a nonprofit organization that saves the lives of millions of children and moms to be around the world by ensuring they get the vitamins and minerals they need to stay healthy and strong. To learn more about Just Thrive Health and all their clinically backed products, don't miss my special episode where I interviewed Tina Anderson, who is the CEO and co-founder. Take control today with Just Thrive. Folks, your nighttime bedroom temperature has a huge impact on your sleep quality. And if you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Miracle Made sheets are inspired by NASA. They use silver-infused fabrics that are temperature regulating, so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. Doesn't matter what the weather is, you will get better sleep every night. These sheets are infused with silver, which helps prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, which lets them stay cleaner and fresher 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands. They feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria, which can clog your pores and causes breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Upgrade your sleep this year. Go to trymiracle.com/malice to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one or a loathed one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo MALICE at checkout, you get a free 3-piece towel set, save an extra 20%. And Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you aren't 100% satisfied, you get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/malice. Use code MALICE. Get your free 3-piece towel set. Save over 40%. Again, that's trymiracle.com/malice to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Let's get back to the show. So something else we were talking about before we discussed is it's really hard to, I hate the term moderate, but it's really hard to put you like in a box politically because you're culturally kind of left of center views. But you're especially becoming a mom, you still have sympathies towards conservatism. You also think all this DI and other stuff is just complete craziness and so on and so forth. And you went from not voting to supporting uh, the Great White Hope, as Jesse Lee Peterson calls him, Donald Trump in this past election. So I think you were like a lot of like the white suburban moms are the swing vote that decide elections. That was you,
I am evidence that women shouldn't vote.
not evidence proof.
I'm proof. I went from voting for Hillary in 2016 to voting for no one in 2020 to voting for Donald Trump in
Well, I mean,
2024.
that's progress, right?
Some would say it's not, depending on where you're,
Sure, I
where
guess,
you're
yeah.
sitting. Some would say that I lost my mind, and maybe
Um,
I did.
what made you kind of make that switch?
In 2020, I couldn't vote for anyone. I was mad at both people. I thought Biden was way too old, and we were making the jokes that everyone's make was making, like after he got kicked out of being able to run, way before anyone was making
Of
them.
course.
Everybody saw this before he even was when he got the nomination. So I was like, "Ah, this guy's old," and Trump, I was not there. He did things during the lockdown that they kind of like to whitewash away and act like he wasn't really a part of, and so I was mad at both of them and thought I was just like, "No." But then the Biden administration occurred, and I really think it was more of a "fuck you" vote. Like, I didn't again, I'm in Texas, my vote doesn't really matter despite what everyone says about Texas going purple, like,
I know,
you
it's
don't
so
live in
weird.
Texas. It's the weirdest thing.
And the other thing is people forget Texas used to be blue, and it was like 20, 30 years ago. It wasn't that long ago.
Oh, interesting. Um, so maybe it could go purple, but
I don't
it's
think it
pretty
could. It
red.
just yeah, back then, blue it was because all those Confederate states were hardcore Democrat for, like, over a century, and they called them
Mm,
yellow dog Democrats in the sense of, "I'd rather vote for a yellow dog than vote for a Republican," I think was the reasoning. But then they switched to, and conservatives pretend this didn't happen, but if you look at their legislatures, they were all blue Dem but these are conservative Democrats. These were not, like, often left of center Democrats.
got it, got it. Yeah, so I just, I don't know. I think it was just 4 years of gaslighting that made me I knew that my vote wouldn't necessarily matter, but I knew that if I didn't vote, it wouldn't be counted in the popular vote, and it was truly a, like, "fuck you" vote from the bottom of my soul. It
Fuck you to
felt
whom, though?
fuck you to just the left, like, the machine of the
Yeah.
left that, or as I guess you is it Curtis Yarvin or the Cathedral,
Sure,
whoever
yeah.
was
Curtis.
that Curtis?
Yeah.
We met at Hereticon.
No?
Fascinating guy. Um,
Did you get a word in edgewise?
he was talking about the body count immediately. I'm like, "Just call me a slut, Curtis. Just call me a slut."
I have a joke about that in my upcoming act, I'll tell you off air.
So yeah, I think it was just a genuine sense that the stuff with Biden, I mean, that should be criminal. The way that they covered up how completely incoherent that guy is, it should be an absolute scandal. And telling everybody that I just got tired of everybody, and I think America said the same thing, that they got tired of being told, like, not to believe what their eyes were seeing
Yeah,
them, not
yeah.
that boys and girls are somehow not different, and that, Biden isn't an frail elderly person who's losing their mind. Like, these are basic things from evolution that we can recognize. You don't need a doctorate. Telling someone like they need a PhD to be able to discern between a boy and a girl, it was nonsense. And Trump, I think whoever's handling him or managing him, that seemed he seemed a little bit more disciplined. I think it's that his chief of staff, really. She kinda knows how to wrangle the
Yeah.
the whole administration. I thought it was brilliant that they did the podcast circuit. You know,
Right.
they were I when people were saying this is dumb, I'm like, "What? Like this
Who
is
was
where
saying
all the
that?
independents are."
Who was
People on
saying
the
that?
left were like, "This is stupid. Why would they do this?"
No, I think they were
And
saying this is like slumming.
yeah, but this is where do you it's
Well, they have
still
to
the
say that because they wanna control the gates.
right. But it's like the absolute denial that you lost control like
Right.
4
That's
or
the
5
one.
years ago.
Yes, that's the one. Here's what else is funny. I think most people old enough to remember in 2008 or 2012, I don't remember which election it was. There was like, oh, Obama has figured out social media. The Democrats have figured out how to work this. The Republicans are never going to get elected again. This is wonderful. F those caveman Republicans. Like, we know how to work the system because we're the part of the future. Then Trump tweets his way into the presidency in 2016. And it's like, why social media is going to destroy America. We have to shut it all down. The government has to run Twitter. Like, we cannot have this.
It's so
Overnight.
true. It's so
Overnight.
and the reason that I had a tweet that I said Gen Z my prediction is Gen Z men are gonna come out for Trump, and people were like, "You're an idiot. You don't know." I'm like, "I have cousins, siblings, they have kids who are these age. I watch them come up through like there was a really funny tweet that went around that was like, you know, Michelle Obama took chicken nuggets out and I was radicalized ever since. But I have like nephews who would say like that I remember being mad at the left when they had changed our lunches or something like that, like they took soda out or whatever. But these kids, you know, they lived through they were kind of playing video games and whatever, and they lived through being able to be like shit talking gamers to
Yeah.
suddenly not. And they lived through kind of the rise of wokeism and Me Too as young, you know, developing teens and young men and women. Women came out for him in Gen Z. And then they lived through COVID and all of the lockdowns. And I had, you know, friends whose sons were going to college and they couldn't go back to college unless they got like their third jab or whatever. And it was nonsense. They didn't need it. So these kids were old enough to kind of see what was going on. And I don't think they realized how many of those kids got red pilled, like
I
all of them.
this couple weeks ago, I felt like I was Winston in 1984 and was finding like the before time because I was hanging out with my buddy and we stumbled upon Julie Klausner's YouTube page. Now, Julie Klausner's a comedian from New York. We swam in the same circles. We didn't know each other, but she was like a typical New York. She wasn't political, but I'm sure her views are like typical New York lefty. Her YouTube channel, again, this is 17 years old. They didn't have that many views. This is when YouTube was just starting out. So this isn't like Daily Wire or some kind of crazy right wing place. And she had this one video where it's like her and another comedic actress who pretend to be sisters teaching about makeup. And she goes through she goes, good foundation is the base of your makeup. Foundation comes in ivory, beige, fair, mocha, unfair, and rapist. So like, and you're sitting there and you're like, you're not only making a racist joke, you're making a rapist joke, but this is what the culture was like then. It was perfectly acceptable because it was very understood. This is humor. Like no one really saying anything here. Calm down. And I forgot even myself that like this was the norm in all politics, like lefty politics, right wing politics. And then somehow it became there's certain subjects you can't make jokes about. And we all kind of bought into it to some extent. And it's like, oh shit, this is what the before time was.
It's so funny you're mentioning this because Maggie was just telling me, how she's been going down these rabbit holes of Gen Z and younger even, I guess Alpha is the next one down. Gen Z kids, watching, like, old, Eminem videos and
Oh yeah.
watching, like and their reaction videos to them, and they're like, "He could say that?" Like, when he drops the F-bomb and ever it's
Yeah.
like, you don't know how actually free America truly was for a while there. It was it was wild. We were wilding out.
Our definition of political correctness was that lesbian from Glee wagging her finger at us because we shouldn't call mentally handicapped people. And we're like, yeah, okay. But and that was a thing. That was where we were. God,
Yeah.
Bridget, we're so old. I feel like this
We're
is such a
so
boomer
old.
episode. It's so old.
I mean, in some ways, but then again, one of the videos that I did right after the election that kind of went huge for dumpster fire was Gen X overcomes its apathy because we're not boomers. Well, I'm not. I don't know if you aren't a boomer. You're Gen X.
Yeah, but boomers is a mindset, you know.
Yeah, but I think Gen X is also a mindset, which is we were
Oh,
Gen X was the ones that grew up in that like true kind of freedom of
sure.
expression and wild times, and also always being told like we didn't get involved, we were apathetic, and maybe it's just Gen X getting older, and but Gen X notoriously was overlooked as a voting bloc because we're so small, nobody cared, and now I do think Gen X has kind of stepped up to the plate somewhat. And people forget, I'm like, everything you use was made by Gen X, like Twitter, all of social media, pretty much. It's crazy how people are like, oh, Gen X didn't do anything. I'm like, other than invent like the internet as you know it.
The thing is, Bridget, you got to be too careful because if any generation gets too self-congratulatory, they become boomers, which is like the
Immediately.
immediately.
But I actually do think it was good that they overcame their apathy and stepped up for a minute because I feel it in myself. I generally my default is whatever. I mean, it defined our whole generation was like whatever,
That
don't
really was
care.
our slogan. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever, never mind.
Guys, I want to talk to you about the Juvent Micro Impact Platform, which is a revolution in biohacking and longevity. Everyone watching this show spends too much time sitting at work, on the car, on the couch. All that sitting takes a toll on your body. Now, the Juvent uses micro impact vibrations to support your joint health, improve bone density, and help with recovery. So, whether you're sitting all day, on your feet all day, hitting the gym hard this year, or just noticing those daily aches a bit more, Juvent is a game changer. Here's how it works. You get on this thing for just 10 minutes a day. It helps your body activate areas that might have been neglected from living in a world where we're sitting on our ass, stress too much, and move too little. Now, imagine being able to move without pain or discomfort. I'm in my 60s, so this is a big issue for me, I assure you. The Juvent Micro Impact Platform has the ability to improve your daily life as well as adding years to your vertical lifespan. And your whole family can use the same platform if you like sharing. It's got a 10-year limited warranty. It's got financing options. It's never been easier to take control of your health. Visit juvent.com/malice. Use code malice to get an exclusive $500 off. That's juvent.com/malice. Use code malice at checkout. Take your health into your own hands in 2025 because, brother, no one else will. Thanks, Juvent, for supporting this episode. Let's get back to the show. I'm guessing that you share my I think a lot of Trump supporters. I said this I was on Jordan Peterson's podcast. Hasn't dropped yet. I'm scared that a lot of Trump supporters are like women who plan for the wedding but not for the marriage. That they want to be the bride but not the wife, and it was a big victory. Like period. End of story on election day. But I think a lot of people underestimate what he's up against in Washington, and this is institutional change is very hard, even if he's like supernatural for one human being to change. The people have their heels dug in, their careers are on the line, and they have no shame or guilt.
There's that aspect. I think the other aspect of this, in the same vein, weirdly, is that they're not ready for the ugly part. Like, there might be a lot of disaffected liberals who are like, yeah, like me, who haven't been kind of steeped in the culture wars for 10 years now, which I can't believe. But they just kind of got red pilled and were like, heck yeah. I'm like, you're not going to like the deportation videos that are about to start coming out. I don't know if you're ready to handle what this actually might look like for if they follow through on some of the things that they say they're going to follow through on. And I know how the media is going to make it look. I'm not sure exactly what it will look. I don't know that they're ready for that either. I think that
Yeah,
people were like, "Yeah, F you," and then they're gonna be like, "Ooh."
I tweeted that out that people aren't that like the mass deportations that Trump is talking about. Like, guys, it's not going to be as simple. And to their credit, a lot of people replied and were like, well, you don't have to have mass deportations. If you just have businesses making sure that they don't hire illegals, then people will flee. And I'm like, I'm glad you have that perspective because that really is a very reasonable prop. This could actually happen. But if we're talking about like whatever his new Homeland Security guy was talking about, rounding up people, there's a lot of judges and lawyers in place to make sure that not one person is forcibly deported. And yes, it's against the law, but the law, as an anarchist, and more people realizing this, the law is whatever people in power decide it is at any given moment. So all
Mhm.
it takes is one judge to, and then they say, oh, well, if the judge says is let this enforce it. I'm sorry, ICE isn't going to just defy a judicial ruling just because Trump tells them to, or Trump subordinates tell them to. So this is a very tricky issue for literally every country, like even
Yeah.
place in Europe where these people don't have citizenship, where they were there ostensibly as refugees because there was a civil war. And it's like, it's not easy because you have this huge bureaucracy in place and a lot of these malevolent NGOs making sure that not one person is forcibly moved from anywhere to anywhere else.
There was a whole long read that I didn't read all of it, so maybe it's not even true, but I read part of it, and
I read a headline.
I read the headline. I read a little bit more than the headline, but not much. I think it was paywalled, and it was all about this, how much the construction industry in Texas relies on, undocumented workers, basically, and how they'd be screwed if they start rounding them up and kicking them out.
Yeah, I hear that, but I think even I don't think even the people who are rabid, if you're a rabid anti-immigrant, anti-illegal immigrant person, those aren't the first people you're looking at, right? Like the first people you're looking at, the ones who are on welfare or not welfare literally, but whoever has support, but they'll take what they can get. But yeah, it's not going to be easy even for them. And the thing people need to realize is, to your point, lots of people who voted for Trump are politically apathetic, and when they see this footage and when you talk about hundreds of thousands of people, there's going to be one mom separated from her kid, or one mom who's legal, the kid isn't, or vice versa. And that story is going to be the headline in the New York Times. Everyone's going to be like, oh my God, this is Hitler, blah, blah. We warned you about this. Now they're going to take you from your kid, so on and so forth. And it's going to get really ugly really fast. So,
Yeah, and I
just because
do
Eisenhower did it doesn't mean it's the same country.
Yeah. And I do think that the coalition that they gathered, it will be interesting to see how they if it's cohesive. You saw this kind of falling apart with the H-1B visa I
Yeah.
was really fascinated with those debates happening between the base and between the Elon stands, and you also have the RFK Jr. people who came over, and
Yep.
seeing how that comes in, if he could get anything done, it'll be interesting that this coalition is not the Republicans should not rely on it. They have to they're going to have to do some work to keep it together if it's even possible. I'm not sure it is. It was like a it was almost like a dysfunctional family that hated each other that came together to have an intervention with a junkie in the family. Like
I that's the blurb for my book, The New Right. I say, I don't remember what the different groups were, what they all have in common, nothing except for an opposition to progressivism.
Yeah.
And the thing is, again, I'm not trying to get people doom and gloomed here. The Republicans do not have a functional majority in the House. They have one seat. So if you have 220 people with egos, which all politicians do, and each one of them is bought and paid for by some NGO or some not-for-profit or some corporation, it's going to be really hard to have the Democrats could barely get massive change through with super majorities in both houses.
Yeah.
So what I think people should be excited about is moving the Overton window and having the idea of cutting government be actually the subject of discussion instead of what new programs we're going to have. And the one they should really be excited about, which has been doing all the dirty work for their GOP, is the Supreme Court, because
Yeah.
I bet you he's going to get 2 seats. Clarence Thomas, which is going to be a wash, but like Sotomayor. And then if they build on the Chevron decision and the Heller decision, things can really start popping.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering how you felt because I think a lot of people have asked me, they're like, "You didn't have to vote," 'cause I really struggled with pulling that lever for Trump. I don't necessarily think he's a
Because
great
you're a woman and it was heavy?
yeah, because I shouldn't be allowed to vote, and,
I'm a
um,
hypocrite, I'm voting when I shouldn't be allowed.
I feel like I should I'm like one of those trad wives who's like, "Repeal the 19th." I'm like, "You
Yeah,
guys
where's
are
your Bonnie? You got the
insane."
red shirt on, what's go
So, yeah, I thought it would be more challenging than it was. It was actually really easy, but I really I couldn't square wanting him, and you actually had the best explanation for why you can square wanting them to lose and wanting him to win, but not being able to vote for him. But I, for myself, this is just for me, I couldn't square that. I was like, no, I want him to win. I should vote for him, even though it was more just wanting the left to lose. But you said something to me that I thought was really insightful that I couldn't remember a quote.
What? Oh. Oh,
You
you
were
well,
just talking about how you could square. You were like, "I do find those things compatible.
yeah,
I
yeah.
find being able wanting the left to lose, but not being able to vote for Trump compatible."
Yeah, I think I people have this, idea that, like, well, you have to choose one or the other, and it's like, that's demonstrably false. You don't. And you could prefer certainly I prefer Trump on most issues to Kamala Harris, but I can't there's enough things that he's done, like with the lockdowns and certain other things, just on a personal level, that I personally say, "Okay, I don't think he speaks for me." It's just as simple as that. And, for a lot of people, they think, "Well, who cares?" And that's perfectly fine for them. I underestimated to what I had this tweet, and obviously it's not scientific, but this was really revelatory. I said, "Would you rather someone in a red state vote for Trump or donate whatever's like $100 to his campaign?" And a lot of people said they'd rather you vote. And it was fascinating to me because I don't understand that. Because that's just a meaningless ritual, whereas giving him campaign money is actually helping him and would have the marginal effect in the election. So I underestimate to what extent people feel the need to be part of a group. And it's like, well, if I don't do it, no one else is going to do it. And that's not how reality works.
So, if as my husband used to kind of present me with this question when I felt very torn, he said, "Okay, so," and this is how you run your Twitter, "So it's a binary choice. The decision comes down to you. Who do you vote for?" This was a thing that he questioned me, and I was like, "Well, Trump." Like that I guess that is the answer to that. And I think really as I got, because I did a lot of writing around this, and it's my job to write about. I don't know that um most people do. Like, I write a lot about my confusion because I feel like I stumbled into this and I'm usually confused, and I was very torn about voting for Trump, and I felt kind of like a crazy person. And then I really had to kind of accept that on some level I like the little guy. Like, I was like, "No, I actually have come," or I really had a hard time when he was nicked and went down and then jumped up and was like,
That's
"Fight,
so
fight,
great.
fight." It really forced me to evaluate a lot of my priors of President Bone Spurs and, all this stuff that I had in my head where I was like, he's just projecting alpha. And I've talked to, like the Drinking Bros guys and people who have been under fire, and they're like, not everybody does that. That's
Of
not like the
course. Yeah.
default thing to do when you're being shot at, is to, no matter how much of a showman you might be, that's still not going to overcome whatever you don't know until how you're going to respond to being shot at until you're actually truly shot at. And so that made me reevaluate some things I felt about him. And I had to admit, like, you constantly say we don't deserve him. Like that refrain was kind of in my head when he would do something. It's like, we really don't deserve this guy.
Oren McIntyre has a quote which people often think is mine, which I find very complimentary when they do, where he says, "You think you don't hate journalists enough. You think you do, but you don't." And I remember vividly after he got shot, Joyanne Reed, who's obviously like a lost cause, was like, "Well, Biden just recently had COVID, so I guess they both survived like life-threatening situations." It's like, okay, but the headlines, and this is not one outlet, over and over, Trump's violent rhetoric got us to this place, and it's just like don't endorse violence against journalists, but like we're at a point where it's so shameless and malevolent and just pure in its malfeasance and depravity that and I disagree with a lot of people. They're like, "Oh, people are waking up." Sure, but the number of people who are waking up is still a small percentage of the population, and there's a very low ceiling for that. The majority are not capable of ever waking up. Now, at the same time, the people waking up are probably the people who matter, because again, the majority is just going to be on the bandwagon. But lots of people, I've said this many times, if you try to explain to them the media is just brazenly and malevolently lying, what they hear is like if I tried to explain to you if the weatherman is lying. Oh yeah, he's saying it's gonna be 70 tomorrow, but it's really gonna be freezing. It's like, why would he like it makes no sense. Like, not mistaken. Not that the meteorologist is mistaken, that the weatherman is lying to you. It's just like
Yeah.
that they can't wrap their heads around it.
Yeah. I question the people are waking up,
Right.
stuff because I don't know that a lot of these people would have woken up if Harris had won. So
Right.
if
Yeah.
you're just waking up because you're pivoting into the new mainstream, I welcome you with open arms, but where the fuck have you been for the last 5 years
Right.
when people were actually getting deplatformed, actually being silenced, actually putting their ass on the line? There's a lot of people who suffered professional, personal consequences for people who were just silent and now suddenly are like, I'm so brave. I'm finally saying my truth. You're like, would you have said? I question whether they would have said it if Harris had won. So I'm dubious of some. I welcome everyone waking up, but I'm slightly skeptical of people, particularly in power or who had power, who are suddenly even like Zuckerberg. You're like,
I was just gonna ask you about it. What do you think of the whole Zuckerberg come to Jesus situation?
welcome. Good. You started eating meat and you became a bro. Like, congratulations on that. But I do think he's
He was a vegan before or vegetarian?
not a vegan, but like he started raising his own cows and eating
Okay,
beef
okay.
and
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
got into jujitsu and started like tapping into his masculinity. He was like a, kind of femme
No,
tech
no,
boy, I
I
think.
bet you they put him on TRT. I bet you any money.
Yeah, it is funny.
It's
I
very
actually
clear.
was joking about this because I started doing this like weight program with this company that I love. And I was like, I feel like this is making me more of a Trump supporter. Like, I blame it on the lifting weights, but there might be something to that. But so I think some of it's natural, but he didn't take any responsibility for making the thing about Zuck is he's such an opportunist. He's
Right.
like,
And
he
he has
has
to be to
this
some extent.
he has a lawsuit coming up against the FTC for like it would behoove him
Right.
to ingratiate himself to Trump, you know?
You know, and his defense, Trump said this because when he was running in 2016, people were like, "You donated money to Republicans and to Democrats, or to Democrats." He goes, "Yeah, I had to. I was a real estate guy. I had to buy these politicians." And they asked
Yeah.
him, "Well, what you gave donated money to Hillary? What you get out of her?" He goes, She came to my wedding."
I mean, yes, everybody I think is slightly opportunistic. There was this joke going around about, Elon getting the deal of the century, buying X, and then getting control of like the United States government, basically. They're like, oh, deal of the century for that guy.
Guys, the days are shorter, but I bet your to-do lists aren't. You could power through those busy days with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. From breakfast to dinner and anything in between, Factor has easy, nutritious options to keep you fueled and feeling your best. Whether you like routine or you like mixing things up, Factor has you covered with 35 different delicious meals every week and over 60 additional convenience options you can add to your box, like keto cookies, pressed juices, and smoothies. Don't let shorter days slow you down. You can stay energized with America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service. Factor lets you do you. You've got 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, avoid meat, or eat well balanced. And because their meals are chef prepared and dietitian approved, you're going to love how they taste, but also how they support your goals. I can speak to that from personal experience. Great stuff from them. You could have guilt-free comfort foods like home-style chicken and gravy. You could have globally inspired flavors like Peruvian shrimp. There's no sacrificing quality for convenience with Factor because their weekly menus offer ways to treat yourself to a restaurant-like meal experience with gourmet plus dishes with premium proteins and seasonal sides. Use your time more efficiently. Let Factor take shopping, prepping, cooking, and cleaning off your daily list of things to do. Head to factormeals.com/50 you're welcome, YOUR, and use code 50 you're welcome to get 50% off your first box and free shipping. That's code 50 you're welcome at factormeals.com/50 you're welcome to get half off your first box plus free shipping while your subscription is active. It's delicious, it's convenient, and it's cool. Highly recommended. Guys, we're all looking for a fresh start this time of year. From eating better, losing weight, we all have some bad habits to stop and good ones to start. You could give your finances a huge fresh start. Make this the year you start to get out of debt and stop being crushed by it. And the first step, contact PDS Debt for a personalized debt solution. If you're making payments every month in your debt, your balances aren't going down, PDS has solutions for you. Everyone with $10,000 or more in eligible debt qualifies. There's no minimum credit score required. Bad and fair credit is accepted. Save more while paying off your debt in a fraction of the time. I was in debt before in the past, and it hangs over your head. It's like the background music wherever you go. It's really frustrating, and getting out of it is one of the best things you could do for your health, your mental health. Make this the year you take control of your debt. Get a free debt analysis right now at pdsdebt.com/welcome. It only takes 30 seconds. That's pdsdebt.com/welcome, pdsdebt.com/welcome. Let's get back to the show. I was having lunch with one of Kurt's comic friends, and they were headlining the mothership, and the guy was a leftist, Keith Robinson. It was really funny. And he just had a joke. Calm down, everyone. He goes, "So what do you guys think President Elon's going to do next?" And
Yeah.
I said, "Please, at the mothership tonight, open with that joke." It would be,
Yeah.
everyone would be so mad. It would be so funny.
It's weird. The crowds there are very like RFK. I've seen enough headliners do their political material, and whenever they say something, Trump will do okay, better than anything to the left, but then RFK is when it really
Oh, yeah.
always pops every crowd. It's like a very RFK Jr. crowd in
But
there.
they'll also like it if you make a joke at Trump's expense that's
Oh,
original and
yeah.
funny. It's
Yeah.
not a Trump derangement syndrome crowd at all. They're there to laugh. If
Yeah.
it's funny, that's all that matters.
So yeah, I do think he's, you know, an opportunist, and so he was on it was funny, I was like somebody was like, "If you read the comments on the Rogan episode, no one's buying it," which gives
Oh,
me
wow.
hope in humanity, like, everyone was like, "Oh, I'm not buying this pivot, this is just
Yes, he
and
he's
even Rog
he's lying. Sorry to interrupt you because it's one thing to be like, the government forced us to do certain things, and I'm sure he's telling the truth about that. You donated money to them, like, a lot, and you didn't do it to both parties, so don't give me this crap that, like, that was gun to head also. Bullshit.
but you also went along with it. So,
Right.
I do think somebody like Elon took a risk and he helped people he allowed people to share that risk with him because he's big enough, and I will give him credit for that, but, like, Zuck did not do any of that, and then he goes on Rogan, and it's like, you don't say, "Yeah, I made those choices, I messed up, I had no balls, now I do, I won't do it again." None of that.
But I
It's
don't
like he's just some newborn baby in the wilderness, like
but I don't even think it's I had no choice. Before COVID, Facebook and Meta, and still I think to this day, this is one of the reasons I'm not on Facebook. Do you have if I wanted my feed to be like Facebook used to be, which is I see every post from all my friends in reverse chronological order, I can't have that. The
Yeah,
algorithm, which is some kind of weird system, uh, they have it so like certain posts you're just not going to see them. I got to go to your page. Same thing with Instagram. I'm like, this is your choice. You're
yeah.
choosing to boost some things and deboost others. So this was not Joe Biden put a gun to your head. This wasn't Obama. This was a decision you made, and you're boosting some voices and silencing or quieting others. This has nothing to do with COVID. So don't give me this mea culpa. I don't buy for it. And I'm glad to hear that no one bought it.
No, go look at the comments, it's wild down there, no one it's actually kind of, um it will give you kind of hope, I think, in the people. I don't think that any of these guys, even the guys who are currently so this is something I wanna talk to you about when we do our crossover. Now that there's this dominant right wing. They are the mainstream, even Rogan to a certain extent, and Trump and Elon. What do you think the kind of counter wave to that will be? It's going to be hard to be like, somebody said like the Republicans caught the car. They're like the dog that caught the car.
Sure.
And now what are you going to do? So are you going to be effective, or is it going to just be more culture war stuff and nothing gets done and changes?
I think I've made this point, and like people like to stick their fingers in their ears and la 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 la. The Democratic Party is the oldest political party on earth. That doesn't happen by accident. Like when I wrote my book on North Korea, I'm like, okay, they've outlasted everyone. They must be doing something right. Now, what they're doing right, I'm using it very loosely in this case, are just being completely depraved and having a system that's very effective in enforcing its dictatorship. What the Democratic Party does very well is gather and consolidate power. That's all they care about, right? People have this idea, oh, they're never going to give up on trans, they're never going to give up on this or that. They will throw anyone at any time under the bus that they need to in order to maintain power. In fact, when Bill Clinton and Al Gore ran for president in 1992, they said, hey, we're the new Democrats. We don't think the way the old Democrats do. We're for the death penalty. We're anti. They had a whole list of like right of center views. And when Bill Clinton ran for re-election in 1996, per Dick Morris, his campaign advisor, he ran against the crazy Republicans, but also the Democrats in the House, saying they're so far left, they're nuts. So there's a long history of the Democratic Party turning its back. Here's a very obvious example, which people, conservatives, just haven't registered. BLM, 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 2020. Remember that. Biden and Officer Harris get into the White House. The BLM people are saying publicly they're not returning our calls. They wouldn't even
Yeah.
send her to have some photo op meeting. They couldn't get a hold of anyone in the White House. This was public. This wasn't a secret. There was not even a pretense that they gave a shit about these people. So I think that a lot of people in the Democratic Party are going to start. There's a difference between Rachel Maddow and Joy Reid and the people who run the Democratic Party. They're not all the same. They're going to start pivoting hard toward the center. Watch.
Do you think, I mean, you're already seeing it. You're already seeing it on kind of the entertainment and even Facebook level. There's a whole theory that essentially this is another conspiracy-ish, that the deep state recognizes that they're already kind of co-opting the like center left to bring them over to the center right to get the people back. But do you think that Republicans have become more so that way of just doing everything for power in in having to even fight against the Democrats?
I don't think no, I think Trump has and Elon have a vision. I don't think Mike Johnson has that vision. John Thune, of all those four, is by far the worst. And he's going to be a far bigger problem than Mike Johnson, I think. And I think he's a complete snake. He has this kind of Stepford Wives look, which I think is often telling, right? When people look that plastic, like they're great on. This is like every 1980s corporate CEO villain in any movie, where the guy's just like perfectly coiffed, like looks like a Ken doll, and then behind the scenes he's like eating kids, right? Like
Mm.
in this case, possibly literally. So I think I want people to temper their expectations, not because I want them to be depressed, but be realistic, because this is a long term battle. There's only so much any president can do in a couple of years. And I'm saying count your wins. If even one agency is abolished, this is a good start to something that could actually happen, and especially on a state level. Like, how exciting would that be if, okay, there's one big agency or even a small one that's abolished in the federal government, then all these Republican governors and even some maybe no, it's not going to happen, start saying like, hey, we did this in my state. We did this in my state. I should be president in 2028. I'm going to build on this Trump revolution. That is something I think that is realistic and people can hope for without getting, because I think people on the right have these expectations and get the rug pulled out from under them. And it's not just on the right. Like Democrats for a long time thought they were going to have socialized healthcare. Every
Yeah.
country on earth has it. Why don't we have it? You guys aren't getting it. And
I
just like
mean,
they're depressed but like, so the disappointment goes in both directions.
Well, and, like, getting rid of all of the student debt. So many people abandoned the left because they realized that they were just lying
Right.
to try I mean, they abandoned that lawsuit the minute they
Right.
lost.
Right.
They were like, "Oh, well, we tried to lie and get
Yeah. Yeah.
pretend that we were gonna do this thing we knew we couldn't do."
Right.
It's
Yeah.
and they but a lot of people were legitimately upset because they believed that they were going to do that for them, and
I
they
am,
weren't.
I have one last question for you because I
Yeah,
know my answer. A lot of people have been saying that people in LA and in
I was
California
just gonna say this to
are
you.
gonna wake up, that this is gonna wake up call for them. You were native there for how long were you in LA?
17 years.
You were
I
at
mean, it's
17
home.
you were
Yeah.
in LA for 17 years just when Julie Klausner was making those videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that that's a realistic claim?
I'm interested to see. I saw a tweet going around that was like, the Los Angeles is about to experience a red wave like you've never seen it. Honestly, it might be a good time to move there. But I
Wait,
am.
I got a perfect tweet. The only red wave LA is experiencing is fire.
Oh wow. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting because it. I've been thinking a lot about this. I don't know what level of so when I was home, here's a great story. When I was home, I was on a walk with my aunt. She lives in Santa Monica. She's like my mother. We
But how many
were
aunts do you have, by the way? Do you know?
sh
Like, how many, like, you're Irish, so, like, do you
yeah.
how many nieces and nephews do you have? Do you even know?
Oh, I couldn't count. I mean,
Right?
I have 26 first cousins just on
Okay,
my
yeah, yeah.
dad's side,
Okay.
yeah, and we're all very close, but I was with her, and we went for a walk. We went up Wilshire. I was like, Wilshire's kinda dodgy. Should we do that? Because 'Cause I'm still in my, like this city is freaking still insane, and it's so sad, and she's like, "It's fine." So we're walking. There's a guy with his back to us, standing with his arms out straight, and I was like, clearly crazy. I could see it from him, and she just kinda kept walking, and I was like, had my guard up, and then I see these 2 security guards approaching us, and he starts screaming at us and following us, and they walk up to us, and they surround us,
Oh,
and they say, "We're just gonna escort you up the street." And I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" And they're
were you
like, "Move it
scared?
on, take it." I wasn't scared because no, not really because I had these 2 secure I would have been
Sure,
if it was
of course.
just him yelling at us, but there were these
Yeah,
2 big guys surrounding us, and they're like, "Take it to the beach, move it." I'm like, "So they're like, "Oh, this guy's been screaming at women and following them." I'm like, "So you're just gonna, like, unleash him on the beach women? Like,
right.
what is even happening right now?" And they
Yeah.
escort us, he picks up a bottle, he starts to try and threaten them, then he walks away, I crossed the street with my aunt. I was like, "What the hell was that?" And she's like, "Oh, the city," and I don't know if this is true. I don't know if it's a city or private businesses, but she said the city has to hire private security to guard the 3rd Street Promenade, which is around where we were, because of all of the, like, crazy mentally ill homeless people. And I was like, you mean the police? Like, the city doesn't the city have private
Right,
security,
right,
like,
right, right.
called the police? Why do we so I don't know if it was businesses on the 3rd Street Promenade who are hiring these private people, which that would also make sense, but it's also ridiculous. So they're just these
Wait,
private
why is it
security.
ridiculous?
I mean, it's ridiculous that for the amount of taxes that you pay
Oh,
in
sure,
that
sure.
city
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to not be able to have to hire private firemen and private security.
But Bridget, that tells you that's by design and not by accident.
So here is my point.
Right.
I don't know that you would have to either be completely isolated from what was actually happening in your city. And that could be true with very wealthy people. You can build literal walls and isolate yourself to the like insane, like, look at what happens in that city. It goes from being in fire. And this is something I realized during COVID. We were on lockdown from COVID, and then we got put on a curfew in lockdown because of all the looting and riots. I'm like, this is madness. And the same thing's happening now. You have a natural disaster followed by a wave of crime. And no one, and that was like, Jaron and I looked at each other during 2020 and we were like, no one's coming. No one's coming. So if you haven't realized that by now in Los Angeles, you shouldn't have to have your entire life burned to the ground to see what was going on in that city. So I'm very skeptical that people are going to suddenly have some wake up, because you were either in denial or you just kind of excused it to these systemic things, which is what a lot of people do. Oh, it's systemic poverty, wealth inequality, all of these, racism, whatever you want to excuse it, instead of actually holding your politicians accountable to do what they say should at a basic level do. I also have never seen from a city council the level of disdain that state and city has for the taxpayers, the
Oh yeah.
actual tax-paying citizens. It is disgusting. So long story short, I'm not optimistic.
Well, it's not building a wall because their perception of reality, blue pill people, is what's on their screens. They can't distinguish between a screen and a window. And if I'm looking at my TV or my monitor and I'm watching the local LA news, or I'm watching CNN or MSNBC or any of these other outlets, dozens of them, or reading the papers, I'm going to have a view of reality that is completely not reality. But it's going to be a synthetic reality that's coherent and internally logical. And I'm going to know what to say and think. And I will believe in my heart of hearts that my choices are voting for Karen Bass or voting for a Klansman. And you could see, or voting for, that who's going to put women in Handmaid's Tale. They believe this. This is what they're told. And since everyone around them says the same thing, it's like, okay, am I crazy? No, everyone I know agrees. And I don't believe that women should be Handmaid's Tale. And I don't believe in lynch law. This is crazy. So yeah, this sucks. But like, you know what? Maybe if we didn't have so many gasoline cars, we wouldn't be in the situation. That's their logic.
So
And it's
maybe
validated constantly.
you do need your life burned down to see reality. Like
Or
maybe
maybe we shouldn't have democracy at all, and these people shouldn't have a voice.
and that's where we should end this podcast.
Bridget, we're running out of time. We're gonna pick up on part 2 on your show. Is it gonna be Walk-ins Welcome or Dumpster Fire?
Walk-ins welcome, but you
Walk-ins
should
Welcome.
come back on Dumpster Fire.
I would love to anytime you want. I'll come on. We always have a great time. The audience likes it too. We're going to film it live at the Creek in the Cave tomorrow on Wednesday. When's that going to drop, by the way? So this is dropping tomorrow on Wednesday. And when's your episode going to drop?
Ours will drop a week later.
Okay, perfect. So we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
Just catching up with you and you.
Well,
I love picking your brain about, like I've been wondering what you thought about Trump and the fires, and I just think you're brilliant. So that's my favorite part.
You are welcome.
Hey, it's Adam Carolla.
And this is Dr. Drew. We're back doing our podcast 3 times a week, talking about current events, health news, and more.
So, if you miss us on Loveline, check out the Adam and Dr. Drew show. New episodes Wednesday through Friday, available wherever you find finer podcasts.
Pluto TV is the place for movie fans like me.
And TV fans like me.
They've got something for everyone, and it's totally free.
You can binge laugh-out-loud sitcoms like Frasier.
And rewatch cult classics like Higher Learning.
Whether you're in the mood to solve a little crime before bedtime with NCIS or Tracker.
Or curl up with a surefire hit like Forrest Gump.
Run, Forrest! Pluto TV has thousands of movies and shows, all for free.
Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.